focused on equitable treatment, access to basic services, and addressing overt discrimination in housing, education, public safety, and employment. Today, while the issues are largely the same, emerging and changing demographics require a new lens in order for a true community integration to occur and for understanding to become a reality. During the Planning Committee's research over the past year, a great many community members expressed the need for a new entity focused on promoting as well as protecting human rights for all. Focused on promoting as well as protecting human rights for all. As articulated in Article 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and displayed on the walls and doors of this auditorium and on the screen that faces us all. This work begins with the affirmation that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. All human beings. Todos los seres humanos nacen libres e iguales en dignidad y derechos y dotados como están de razón y conciencia, deben comportarse fraternalmente los unos con los otros. In Arabic, Yuladu Jamiun, all human beings. In Vietnamese, Dat Ka Moi Ngoroi Sim Ra. In Chinese, Ren Ren Shenger Jiyo. Japanese, Subate no Ningyo. Every time I hear these words, I feel like singing. All human beings. To whom does this apply? It applies to all human beings. Sing it with me. We'll have a movement. All human beings. To whom do these rights inure? To whom does this document apply? All human beings. Does this apply to all individuals, all couples, all families? Does this apply to people with parking tickets? Does this apply to people who do not look like me? Does this apply to poor people? Does this apply to homeless people? To people with physical or mental disabilities? Does this apply to people involved in domestic violence? Does this apply to everyone in Portland? To whom does this apply? All human beings. You can know that now that you've sung it. You can sing it every time the question comes to mind. Who deserves these rights? You've already heard that the Planning Committee sees the Commission promoting and protecting human rights through education, research, advocacy, and intervention. Education, research, advocacy, intervention. Promotion as well as protection of human rights for all. What can be done to ensure that the work of this new commission will be effective and durable? On the basis of Portland's past experience with human relations commissions, on extensive input from current community members, and on careful study of well-functioning human rights commissions in other communities, the Planning Committee has identified the Commission's 5 basic needs and ways of meeting them. They're discussed in detail in the committee's report. I'll summarize them very briefly now. First, the Commission needs real authority. People want a way to hold the city accountable for addressing issues of inequity in public view and for driving proactive public policy. Secondly, the Commission needs autonomy. People want a commission that is not subject to the politics of the city council or of any one community group. A commission that maintains direct access to the mayor and to the council, and that can promote and protect the human rights of all people who live, work, study, worship, travel, play in our community without fear of political retribution. Third, the need for sustainability. Permanence with ongoing city funding is essential. Without it, trust for the city to engage respectfully and effectively in these community issues will be threatened, and the Commission itself will have little basis for earning public confidence. Fourth, the need for community responsibility. Active community participation, as you've just demonstrated, is essential, not just for social support, but for priority setting, for planning, for implementation, and for evaluation. Fifth, the need for jurisdictional collaboration. Although the present proposal is for a Metropolitan Portland Human Rights Commission, the Planning Committee envisions discussions with Multnomah and Washington counties to explore a regional joint commission. Once up and running, the community connection is critical to the continuing success of the office, and as such, the Commission's priorities need to be revisited through community needs assessments every 3 years. Thank you.
Hello there, Mayor, City Council members. Good to see you. Thank you. My name is Lou Frederick. And before we get to the recommendations, I'd like to review the methodology this project team used. The findings and recommendations presented in this report include research, interviews, and input from community leaders from all over Portland, from surrounding neighborhoods, states, and several other countries. Research of national and international human rights entities was conducted as a foundation of this project, and we conducted in-person site visits to other human rights commissions in Eugene, Salem, and Seattle. Together, these sources allowed us to compare and contrast the size, structure, charge, and focus of the existing models. Other existing policy documents, work groups, and committees such as Vision PDX, the Immigrant and Refugee Task Force, SAFE, and racial profiling were also reviewed and considered. A diverse cross-section of people were interviewed, and you can find their names on page 17 of the report. But there were also other names that you won't see because a lot of the discussions took place in grocery stores and coffee shops and along neighborhood streets as people found out about this particular proposal and plan and came out to talk with a number of us about it. Some of these folks include past members of previous Portland Human Rights Commissions and other commissions, former employees and elected officials of city government, concerned residents, representatives of organizations from various cultural groups, representatives of organizations that focus on specific social justice issues, city leaders, city commissioners, county representatives, the mayor, the police chief, human rights leaders, and members of the U.S. Department of Justice. Also, a group comprised chiefly of people actively involved in human rights issues, present and past, was appointed by the mayor to advise the project at different points in time. In our research, we examined multiple commission structures existing in many different forms of government, from formal enforcement commissions to independent advocacy organizations. Now, there are a couple of successful examples that I'd like to point out. For example, Seattle, Washington, and Tempe, Arizona. For Seattle, there are several things that stand out. One of them is the fact that they do a number of workshops for the Human Rights Commission, and that's on a variety of issues, and they have those workshops with companies as well as with agencies and private groups. But one of the things that's most recently been done in Seattle has been interesting is the homeless, looking at the homeless issues. They had a number of homeless folks who were attacked and treated poorly there. They decided that what they would do is, in fact, study what was taking place, how the homeless were being treated, and include them as part of the groups that they wanted to make sure were treated well. The other thing that Seattle has done is create a number of pamphlets, brochures on everything from domestic violence and employment to fair contracting to landlord-tenant rights to hate crimes to civil rights and air travel. And they've done this, and they've put these out in 19 different languages, so that because of the number of people and the different types of folks in Seattle. In Tempe, Arizona, they have been known for their diversity awards. They have been giving out awards for 10 years now to different folks during their Martin Luther King Day celebrations. But one of the most interesting things for them is that they have concentrated recently on the concern in Tempe of making sure that there is a group of minority-owned manufacturers that they be placed in the supply system for the other businesses, and they should be part of that whole system. And that's been a goal this year. And they've honored a couple of companies that have done just that kind of work. These are the kinds of things that take place around the country and around the world. Each one of the commissions that I looked at and talked about different issues for their particular area. Francis has a couple of other things to tell you about.
Good evening. My name is Francis Portillo from Portillo Consulting International. Do it right the first time. It needs to have teeth. There must be a relationship to council, but not in a council office. Research and reports are also important. These are a few examples of comments that Lou and I heard during our interviews and during our research. So now we get down to it. Using all of this information, these are the recommendations for the structure for the new commission. A new Office of Human Relations will be created to house the Human Rights Commission, the Racial Profiling Committee, and will implement or track the Immigrant and Refugee Task Force recommendations. The Commission will not employ civil rights enforcement authority that will preclude us from intervention and advocacy. Criminal and civil avenues for formal complaints, investigations, and litigation already exist. However, the office will address incidents and patterns of institutional discrimination and bigotry through intervention. Because it is not the enforcer, the Commission can act as the facilitator, convener, and mediator, positively educating and conducting research to improve intergroup and interpersonal relationships, thus retaining the ability to advocate for those who do not have a voice within city government. The office would remain permanently in the mayor's portfolio, but report to the full city council. The mayor has the authority to hire the office director, and the city council has the authority to approve and terminate employment of the director. The office will be located external to City Hall in a location yet to be determined. Other relevant and funded positions or projects, such as the Immigrant and Refugee Office, could also be housed there. Once up and running, the community members will be nominated for a commissioner's seat by a committee comprised of human rights commissioners, community members, and council officers. At which point, nominees then follow the current city procedures for appointment. The commission will consist of 11 to 15 council-appointed community members occupying seats of staggered terms of no more than 2 consecutive 3-year terms. Initially, the scope of the office is limited to the city of Portland. However, our longer-term goal is to expand the commission to serve regionally.
Commissioners, please consider the creation of this office as an investment in our future generations. In Portland, everyone deserves to be valued and respected, to feel safe, and be free from discrimination. Any person who lives, works, studies, worships, or visits our city and experiences discrimination will have a place to take their experience and know that it will not just become another story. This entity will be a place where true, safe dialogue can occur around sensitive matters that can move us toward understanding.
That concludes the report overview. But before we move on to our invited testimonies, we'd like to thank everyone who contributed their thoughts, their opinions, their ideas during all parts of this project over the last year and a half. Particularly the people you see up here, the people who are on page 17, and people who we might not have up there and should be. It has been an honor, it has been a pleasure, and it has been a great learning experience for me, and I know I speak for the rest of our team. We're very excited for the city, we're very excited for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, folks. I think we're going to have folks sit in your seats. So that means you're going to have to go sit down there. Oh, Commissioner Salzman has a question.
So I guess Lou and Francis, tell me about the size of the offices in Eugene, and Salem, and Seattle, Tempe. How many full-time employees are there?
Eugene and Salem, you did it, okay. We both visited Eugene and Salem, so I'll talk about those first. Eugene has four people doing work. Help me out with memory too. One executive director and 3 people doing full-time pieces, and then the administrative assistant. Salem has 2 people, an executive director and administrative assistant.
So these are full-time employees in each
Yes.
one of these cities?
Yes, in both.
So Seattle is bigger?
Seattle is a little different because Seattle has an investigative team that they have involved. So it's a much larger entity because they have a component that is doing outreach and working with staff, with the community, but they also have an investigative team. So the non-investigative folks account for about, I think it's 5 people. Seattle is also part of the Office of Civil Rights for Seattle, so there are 2 other entities under that system. And Seattle's approach is to have a director and 2 or 3 other directors who are other people who are working with the community, and they also are, because of the language effort, they use a number of translators. So there are a number of temporary employees who act as translators for them.
So the 4 staff that you're proposing, or the report proposes, would handle the Human Rights Commission, the Racial Profiling Committee, and the Immigrant and Refugee Task Force recommendations. Those would be the staff that would handle all of them.
That is not the way I understand it, Carmen. Where'd she go? Is that?
Not sure.
I think we're going to hear some recommendations
Yes.
from the Immigrant and Refugee Task Force later.
Right.
And then there'll be some decisions to make as to how to allocate the resources. But at this point, no decisions have been made about the recommendations.
So the 4 positions recommended in your report aren't necessarily, or we're going to hear, aren't necessarily the staff for those other functions.
Right.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions?
So, I think this is really good work, and that was a very good presentation. A couple of clarifying questions. Under advocacy, I think it would fall under advocacy, but I just wanted to make sure that we're thinking on the same wavelength. The city produces reports in areas that are, I think, within the scope of this group, but I wanted to see how you see what you believe how they should be dealt with. We produce reports on minority contracting, on affirmative action. We probably have a facility evaluation in terms of ADA compliance. How do you see those annual reports or quarterly reports intersecting with the work of this group? Would that be something that, as the folks that have helped put this together, that what would be the relationship between those sorts of efforts by the city and this group?
I think the fundamental model with regard to reports from the City Council is that matters that come to the Commission and that are considered by the Commission will set the stage for the Commission making recommendations to the City about what needs to be included in reports that the City is planning to issue.
Thanks, that's helpful. I guess I'm also would be interested in, as the startup continues, for the HRC to also be a point of accountability to bureau managers and commissioners in charge of portfolios and on the issues of minority contracting and affirmative action and ADA compliance. And I think just having regular reports required to be presented to the Human Relations Commission would be an increased level of accountability that exists right now.
And that is, in fact, the model basically across the country. You have folks, different groups reporting to the commission, to the various commissions, suggesting different programs, but you also have reports coming out of the commission itself. And that's been one of the things that past commissions, you may hear from some coming up here right after us, are most proud of. There were a number of reports that were landmark reports that Portland did that people are very proud of, and it's with good reason.
I think it's accountability, but it's also prevention. We can see the reports and see what's going on and try to help before we get into trouble.
And I just want to thank you for including research. I think there's that was one of the inclusions that I suggested, and I think there's a lot that we need to collectively learn beyond the superficial about race relations and bigotry and other issues that face our city. And I'm looking forward to this group really digging into some of those issues and learning from it.
Thank you.
And having the whole city learn from it as well.
And that input was really helpful about the research piece, so thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, folks. We have some invited testimony now, and I would ask that Chief Rosie Sizer, Dan Noley, Layla Cully, and Mahogany Black please come forward. So we'll first hear from Chief Sizer and Dan. I wasn't sure what to call you, Sheriff, Assistant Chief,
Furniture builder.
And then we'll hear from Layla and Mahogany.
Rosie Sizer, Portland Police Chief, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm extremely honored to be asked to testify on behalf of the Office of Human Relations and the work that's been presented to you. I'm a little uncomfortable with the person I'm having to sit next to, but happy to be here. As a police Portland police officer for 23 years, I'm very cognizant of the necessity to have an ongoing forum, a convener, to address issues of bias in its many manifestations and to promote human rights in our city. I also recognize that you need expert facilitation skills to have dialogue about something that has been in American history and in our community, issues that are extremely divisive, contentious, and difficult to talk about. I'm here particularly to endorse the concept of having the racial profiling committee report to the Office of Human Relations, because I think it will ensure consistency, it will ensure longevity over time, and additionally, it will root the issue of bias in policing in the larger framework of bias in its many manifestations in society. And I think that's very helpful for the dialogue. Thank you.
I'm Dan Noley. I don't understand why I have to sit to her left.
When I was sheriff, we studied inmates being booked into jail. A small number of them were booked over and over. When we looked at the top 20 inmates that were being booked constantly, we found 18 of them were African American. Some people immediately pointed to the police and said, well, it's all about the arrest. But there were other issues as well. All of them were heavy drug users. Most of them had serious mental illness issues. Their profile was almost always thrown out of drug and alcohol treatment. It was also used often as a reason to release them from community-based mental health treatment. They were on the street, moving from crisis to crisis and arrest to arrest. There were many issues to deal with, but one of those issues was certainly their race. When I looked at some recent medical studies of treatment, it was found that white men were more aggressively treated for heart disease than women and minorities. I'm certainly no doctor, but I'll bet there are a multitude of factors involved in that. But at least part of that is about race and gender. We're fighting wars in the Middle East involving a religion that few of us understand. Even in our own current presidential race, we keep hearing about the first African American, the first woman, the first Mormon, or the first Baptist minister that's going to be our next president. In Oregon, we all know that sexual orientation, gay marriage, civil unions will continue to be on the front burner. Issues of race, gender, religion, sexual orientation are with us every day. Yet we as a community don't talk about those issues. Oh, we may label a person, we may talk about somebody's race, we may talk about the problem of gender, we may talk about the impact of religion, we may talk about the effect of sexual orientation, but we rarely have meaningful, non-judgmental discussions about those actual issues. The new Human Relations Commission will provide a vehicle for our community to have those discussions. It will give us a mechanism for diffusing problems that always occur when people of differing backgrounds and views learn to live closer together. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Layla Cully. I was born in the Middle East and have lived mainly and worked in Portland for the last 30 years. I am married to a third-generation Portland man who runs a small company that was in his family for 3 generations. So I feel I really live in both the Arab Muslim Portland community and in the community at large. I'd like to address the question of why we need a Human Rights Commission. And I would like to remind you of an article that was a lot more articulate than anything I could possibly put together myself. My background is not in wordsmithing. I'm a finance officer. But the article appeared in the Oregonian. It was written not by a Muslim, but by the Associate Vice President for Communications at Lewis and Clark. And the title of the article was Malice for Muslims. And the article talked about how attacks on Muslims in the United States are now increasing, which is a trend that did not happen right after 9/11. But as Dan was mentioning, not too many people know what the Muslim religion is about. And some of the presidential candidates are trying to make points with what I would call the fanatic arm of the Christian right by attacks on Muslim Americans. I think that you've all heard it and seen it on television, and I won't bore you with the whole list, but let me just pick one. Governor Romney indicated that if he were to be picked as president, he would not have a Muslim in his cabinet, period. So it's not a matter of whether the person, is qualified or not, just by the fact that he is a Muslim. So in effect, he is making a judgment about 1.3 billion people that live on this earth. That's something very disturbing to us Muslim Americans. I would just like to say that the city of Portland would be a much better place with a Human Rights Commission. I know that the Arab and Muslim community in Portland would be very much in support of that. And I'd be happy to answer any questions before I leave. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Mahogany Black, and I'm a senior here at Jefferson High School. Today, I'm coming to you to speak about human rights, which often crosses the barrier of civil rights. In the summer of 2004, me and my friend Mercedes, human and civil right of innocent until proven guilty was denied us. After spending the day at Clackamas Town Center shopping for school clothes, we got on the 72 bus to go home. We got about 2 miles down the road when we heard and saw a police siren. The bus came to an unexpected stop. The driver was asked to step off of the bus, and after 10 minutes, me and Mercedes were asked to do the same. The bus left, and the police told us that we were being detained because we fit the description of two women that had just did a strong arm robbery at Ross. We had to show them all of our receipts, belongings, and our IDs. The main officer that had done the search kept yelling at us, making me feel very uncomfortable, so I called my mom. My mom made it clear that she was upset and told me that she was on her way. While waiting for her, a woman came to the bus stop and told them that we did not fit the description. However, they still kept us detained and kept asking us more questions. When my mom arrived, the officer told her about how we fit the description and the description of the robbery suspects. Once my mom asked what the description was, the officer became very angry and told her that he did not have to tell her any more information. I brought forth this story to you to advocate that this is a problem in society. I feel that my race played a very big role in this situation, and when this happened, I felt as if there was nothing I could do to solve it. In the future, when there is a human relations office, that will be the place where I and other people like me can go to seek justice. Thank you.
Thank you, folks. We'll now have Donita Fry, Jeanette Pi Espinoza, Emily Gottfried, and Charlene McGee. Thank you, folks, for being here. Can you speak, state your name for the record, and we'll go in the order that they were called. Donita, Jeanette, Emily, and Charlene.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Donita Fry. I'm an enrolled member of the Shoshone-Bannock Tribes of Fort Hall, Idaho. Affairs Council, an organization housed at Naya Family Center to increase the voice of the Native community, involve elders and youth in grassroots advocacy, and reduce poverty and oppression. Some of our accomplishments in partnership with the City of Portland include the largest number of vision surveys responses, with Native Americans representing over 6% of the participants. A 2-year study on poverty for the Native American community, resulting in expanding resources and opportunities. Our community is growing stronger each and every day. Although we have a long and beautiful history in this community, we continue to face great struggles. I have the opportunity to work for my community every day, and not a day goes by that a racist incident or issue doesn't come to my attention. Not small issues, issues that degrade our community, exclude us from opportunity, and wear on our spiritual health. And letting us know, in sometimes subtle and sometimes not, ways that we are still not welcome everywhere. Many people in this community are aware of what happened 50 to 100 years ago. Those issues are still impacting our children today, not to mention the more recent issues. Did you know that Native Americans were legally prohibited from practicing their religion until 1978, when the Native American Freedom Religion Act was passed? This is within our lifetime. And there are many other similar federal policies I can mention that have shaped the worldview of our elders, parents, and children in the past 30 years. These are large national issues impacting tribal communities everywhere. But Portland is the 9th largest Native community in the nation, and we certainly have a long ways to go. It was only a few years ago that one of our elders, while experiencing a diabetic seizure, was arrested for being drunk. The assumption made because he is Native American. Just within this past year, another elder was kicked off a bus because she could only produce tribal ID as identification. Our families are constantly stopped and harassed regarding their citizenship because of the color of their skin. Not actually that surprising, considering we were the last ethnic group to gain the right of citizenship and the right to vote in the United States. If we look in our own backyard, we will find that the City of Portland's Planning Bureau does not include Native American statistics. If it does, we are grossly undercounted. This is a form of exclusion and institutional racism. I share these difficult issues with you today in the spirit of healing and moving forward. The Native community of Portland is a committed partner in resolving these issues and supports all communities and every person in Portland gaining respect, justice, access, and equity. We fully support the creation and long-term financial commitment of the Human Rights Commission. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Potter, Commissioners. My name is Jeanette Paya-Espinoza. I'm here tonight to speak from actually two perspectives. From that as a former executive director of the Metropolitan Human Relations Commission and also as a longstanding resident of the City of Portland. I was also the director of the Salem Human Rights Commission before coming to the City of Portland. I had the opportunity to be the director of the Metropolitan Human Relations Commission from 1989 to 1991. As you may recall, those were very difficult years in our community. Immediately following the beating death of Mulugeta Sarah, in the midst of the Tom Metzger trial, in the face of bias crimes rising to triple digits, dramatic and palpable increases in organized extremist groups, and last but certainly not least, measure number 9. Those are just the visible and public incidents that occurred. Emotions ran high every day and actions followed suit. In those days it was dangerous to work in human rights and no one asked whether our city needed a Human Rights Commission. At that time, the Commission, in partnership with other key nonprofit organizations, fulfilled an indispensable role in stabilizing our community, in stabilizing this city that was fraying at the edges, if you will. Today, most of those nonprofit organizations, including the Commission, no longer exist. But then the trial was over and won. Bias crimes seemed to level off. Extremists changed their tactics, so we didn't see them goose-stepping in the streets anymore. And over time, this city became complacent. It was lulled into a sense that somehow it was all good now. The problem is that underneath the surface, nothing, absolutely nothing, had changed. Today, the bigotry and intolerance that allow these extreme acts, people, and groups to exist in our community still exist, deeply rooted in the hearts and minds of well-meaning Portlanders. Issues of bias and injustice lie just beneath the surface. We all know it. They're flashpoints for conflict, hostility, intolerance, and even violence. We see it flare when the topics of immigration and gentrification come up, and oh yes, when streets are named or renamed or not. So we do need a Human Rights Commission to be our steward for what is right. And of course, we need it in difficult times. But more importantly, we need the Human Rights Commission to be proactive so our city never revisits those years again. We need a commission to help increase understanding and tolerance, to call attention to issues and situations that need to be addressed before they erupt. The bottom line is we need a commission now. We've gone too long without one. It's well established that the commission in all its iterations faced challenges. Based on my experience as an executive director of the commission, I believe that the recommendations included in this report do provide the structure, the checks and balances, and the autonomy to help ensure the stability, authority, and relevance of the Human Rights Commission over time. This time, I think we got it right. Let me close by saying this as a longtime resident of the city of Portland. You are all my elected leaders. I believe that your job, as it relates to this issue, is not to assess the need for this commission from your vantage point as white male elected officials sitting on an all-white male city council, but rather from mine, a woman of color, a longtime resident, a contributing member of society, and a taxpayer of this city who expects you to protect her best interest. You have privilege, and so do I, in many, many ways. But the difference between you and me is that for me, not a day goes by that I am not reminded in some small or large way that my ability to enjoy equity and justice is limited. I want you to know that this commission makes a difference in the quality of my life and how I feel about this city. And I trust that you will agree with me that my dignity, my safety, my rights, and those of all the others that share my experience are worth, at the very least, the price of this commission. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Emily Gottfried, Executive Director of the Oregon Chapter of the American Jewish Committee. Founded in 1906, AJC is America's oldest human rights organization. Locally, we have been the founder or lead sponsor of the Coalition Against Hate Crimes, the Oregon Holocaust Memorial in Washington Park, thanks to you all, and the 2-month-long events featuring the International Anne Frank exhibit, which were attended by a combined total of nearly 130,000 people. I've been privileged to serve on the advisory committee for the City of Portland's new human rights entity. I can attest to the thorough, thoughtful, and inclusive process that was used to create the plan that is being presented today. I want to focus my remarks on the core values of the proposed Human Rights Commission. The first, collaboration. My own work as part of many interfaith, interethnic, and community-wide projects and coalitions has proven to me the value of true collaboration. Portland's new Human Rights Commission will have the chance to model what is essential for success in building a strong community. Justice. By working to ensure that the 30 articles listed in the UN Declaration of Human Rights are promoted and honored in the City of Portland, the Human Rights Commission will help Portland make strides toward becoming a more just community. Respect. Working together in a collaborative way toward justice requires respect for all as a core value. Human rights begin with each community member respecting the rights of others. Inclusion. The articles of the UN Declaration of Human Rights are for all people. The Portland Human Rights Commission can set an example of inclusiveness, which isn't always easy, but will be well worth it in the end. Credibility. With its support for the Human Rights Commission, the City of Portland will show with action, and not just words, a true commitment to human rights for all. Tenacity. In the Jewish community, we say, never again to the atrocities of genocide. We take this admonition seriously, but we don't let it stop with our own Holocaust. We are told in the Talmud, you are not required to complete the work, but neither are you free to desist from trying. By supporting the Human Rights Commission, the City of Portland will cement its commitment to trying to complete its work of building a better community, which will take time and energy, as all important issues do. Truth. The Human Rights Commission's commitment to truth will not be easy, but will yield solid results. Again, quoting the Talmud, the world is sustained by 3 things: by truth, by justice, and by peace. And finally, caring and compassion. Now, during this week, while we honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we are reminded of his beloved community. The Human Rights Commission will be an important step along the way toward Portland becoming such a caring and compassionate community. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Charlene Addie McGee, President of the NAACP branch. I'm a proud representative of the next generation of leadership, the next catalyst of change for the city of Portland, the state of Oregon, and the world as a whole. Before you is a passionate individual who wears many hats and straddles an array of identities. My 26 years of experiences have provided me with a unique global and enriching life perspective that has stirred my life. I'm Liberian-born, Oregon-grown, and a representative of the growing diversity of the city of Portland. As a 16-year resident of the city of Portland, I am elated at the opportunity and unlimited possibilities that exist with the reestablishment of the Portland Human Rights Commission to shape and reflect the increasing diversity of our city while seeking inclusiveness and the opportunity to resolve existing problems of institutional and ingrained discrimination, inequity, and mistrust. I'm before you to speak of my support of the creation of this commission. We ask for your support to ensure appropriate authority, sustainable and adequate funding, and ensure community responsibility and participation. My upbringing and experiences as an African immigrant in the United States have created and impacted my understanding of different cultures and the influences in the world. The dynamics of constantly straddling two different cultures has contributed to my ability to identify and interact successfully with people from different culture, class, and social background. We are all aware of the institutional racism, health and social inequities, the desire for increased civic engagement, public safety, wishes for correcting the system of unequal justice, ensuring broad aspects to affordable housing, accessing good jobs with health insurance, economic prosperity, strengthening and increasing our citizen voice. The Portland NAACP seeks the support and opportunity to collaborate and partner with entities such as the City of Portland Human Rights Commission. Around us, we see the need of disenfranchised individuals and communities cry out. They cry out for equality, they cry out for justice, they cry out for same living wage jobs, they cry out for economic prosperity and stability, and they cry out for advocacy and a proactive response. They also cry out for their urge and desire to exercise the basic civil and human rights. The formation of the Human Rights Commission would allow the City of Portland, its residents and elected officials to provide a forum to actively engage and empower all people while fostering diversity and resolutions to issues rooted in bias and discrimination. We need a forum to engage in facilitated dialogue about racism, sexism, and the various facets that plague our society. We are confident that the City of Portland Human Rights Commission will rise up to the great call to advocate, empower, and engage all members of our society, oftentimes who feel isolated and marginalized. Thank you for your time and consideration.
The last two are Kathleen Sadad, Jason Lim. Is Jason Lim here? There he comes. Thanks for being here, folks. When you speak, please state your name for the record.
I'm Kathleen Sadad. 37-year resident of Portland. And that bright light is really something. I love my city. And I'm proud of my city because over the years it has recommitted and committed itself to making it a livable place. And the people in this city recognize that livability is not just a matter of light rail, cool jazz, and coffee shops. A Human Rights Commission is another vehicle for making our city more livable. I don't think there's an argument about the need for it, or at least I don't understand that there would be an argument against the need for it. We have matured enough to understand that issues of difference are not just refraining from using bad language. Those issues go deep within our society. And the resolution of those issues requires skill and knowledge and commitment and ongoing application of the principles by which we would like to live. When Portland was founding its first Human Rights Commission, I was 8 years old, living in Nashville, Tennessee, and having the experience of riding the back of the bus. We've come a long way, but we're not where we need to be. I also was here during ballot measure 9 and was working in Salem when Mulugeta Sarah was murdered. We can't run away from this. We can't wish it away. We have to work on it. We have to work on it collectively, intentionally, in an ongoing way. I live here. I want our city to be the best it can be. I also want to live with a greater sense of community and security. As a 67-year-old African-American lesbian, sometimes I feel very insecure. But I do believe that dialogue plays a very large part, or can play a very large part in changing things, and that a commission can facilitate that dialogue, help people to get to different places than they are now, and if not agreement, at least agreement to give respect. I was chair of the Diversity Committee for the Future Focus Plan back in 1990, and that gave me a lot of hope, and we're still working on that, and we're still pushing in another form, and it comes back again, and it comes back again, and I'm encouraging us not to let it go away, but to keep on working on it. It takes hard work to make these necessary changes. It takes money, it takes time, it takes commitment, it takes knowledgeable people, it takes resources, and the ongoing commitment of the city of Portland. I am asking you to make that commitment by establishing the Office of Human Rights and a Human Rights Commission. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Jason Lim, and I'm here to talk about why I believe establishing a Human Rights Commission is important. One of my personal role models has worked to advance human rights in Portland for some time. My father, Jamie Lim, served on the Metropolitan Human Rights Commission for many years, and he has seen his share of community issues surface over those years. He has experienced firsthand how underrepresented communities, even if they are large in population, can be overlooked when it comes to jobs, housing, and small business opportunities. These reasons are why he instilled his values of community service and advancement within the rest of my family and in our family business. And while we are doing our part to create and build opportunities, it is essential that local government be at the table in partnerships with the community, and to actively participate in these issues. A whole generation of Portlanders, like myself and my friends, haven't had the opportunity to know the power of advocacy through the city commissions like this. I heard about the old days, and I wondered what that might be like for others in our community to know there is a place in the city who cares enough to track the things that are still happen here. Like businesses no longer patronizing because we were treated inappropriately. Previous generations like my dad's had to work really hard just to get their foot into the door in business, education, government, and services. Community members worked together as a group, but often had to advocate alone for their needs. Today, largely due to the perseverance and advocacy of our elders, we don't only have our foot in the door, but we have a seat at the table. This office is a symbol of how City Hall has changed. I believe it will invigorate the new generation of diverse Portlanders to understand others and to take more ownership in this city. We want to be part of the change. When I was a kid, there was a popular t-shirt that said, "Love sees no colors." Today, I want people to see my color, my heritage, and my story because I am proud of what it brings to this city. Difference isn't something to ignore, for it is part of a positive change. Let's embrace it, understand it, integrate it. That is truly the common community vision for all Portlanders. Gandhi, another personal hero of mine, said, "To be the change you want to see in the world," and that action expresses priorities. The responsibility for change that lies equally within all of us. By moving forward with this commission, you will prioritize every person's right to respect and dignity, regardless of who they are, what they believe, or where they come from. Our progress as a city and as a community should be evaluated by how we encounter moments of inequality and what we collectively do to move us to the place that uplifts us all. Thank you for acting to express your priorities and for supporting the Human Rights Commission in Portland. Thank you.
That is all the invited testimony. How many folks are signed up?
We have 15.
15? Okay. Would you please call the first four?
First four are Lisa Ayakuzi.